Jane Parker, later known as Jane Boleyn or Viscountess Rochford, was born around 1505 into the ambitious Parker family of Norfolk. Her father, Henry Parker, 10th Baron Morley, was a learned man and courtier, who gave Jane a refined education. From a young age, she was groomed to navigate the treacherous and glittering world of Tudor politics. In 1524, Jane married George Boleyn, brother of Anne Boleyn, thrusting her directly into the orbit of one of the most powerful and controversial families at court. As George Boleyn rose in power under King Henry VIII, Jane was appointed as a lady-in-waiting to Queen Anne Boleyn. This placed her at the very heart of the royal marriage that reshaped English history. The Tudor court was a place of splendor and deception, where whispers could kill and favor shifted as quickly as the king's affections. Jane learned to survive by reading the shifting currents of power, aligning herself with those who seemed ascendant. She became a master observer, calculating and cautious, yet her closeness to Anne and George would prove both her greatest advantage and her eventual downfall. Her intelligence and access to royal secrets made her valuable, but also dangerous, especially in a world where loyalty was fleeting and truth often fatal. As Anne Boleyn's influence waned, Jane's survival instincts kicked in. When Anne and George were accused of adultery and incest in 1536, Jane provided testimony that helped condemn them. Her motivations remain debated. Was it self-preservation, coercion, or betrayal? Regardless, her words played a pivotal role in their executions. This act haunted her for the rest of her life, and though she remained at court, serving multiple queens after Anne's fall, the trauma of betraying her own family began a slow psychological unraveling that would culminate in her tragic end. Despite the loss of her husband and sister-in-law, Jane Boleyn remained at court, serving Queens Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, and Catherine Howard. This remarkable resilience underscored her adaptability but also revealed the psychological toll of court life. With every change in the Queen's chambers came new intrigues and fresh dangers. Jane continued to collect dangerous secrets, becoming a living archive of Tudor scandals. Her survival hinged on her usefulness and her ability to remain invisible. Yet behind the composed exterior, Jane was unraveling. The guilt of her past testimonies, the constant surveillance, and the atmosphere of fear ate away at her stability. In 1540, when Catherine Howard ascended to queenship, Jane became her confidant and lady-in-waiting. Catherine was young, impulsive, and tragically ill-equipped for the role. Her affair with Thomas Culpeper, a member of the king's privy chamber, would draw Jane into a final, fatal web. Jane facilitated their secret meetings, likely seeing it as a way to secure her influence and protect her position. However, when their affair was exposed, Jane's involvement was considered treason. She was arrested in November 1541 and sent to the Tower of London, the same place where George and Anne Boleyn had met their end. There, the ghosts of her past returned with merciless force. Within days, she experienced a severe mental breakdown, speaking incoherently and reliving the traumas of her life. Her captors documented her descent into madness, noting her inability to grasp her situation or understand the charges against her. Even hardened Tower officials recognized she was no longer sane. By all legal standards of the time, she should not have been executed. English common law had protected the mentally ill from execution since the 14th century. But Jane's case would prove to be an unprecedented and terrifying exception. Henry VIII was determined to see Jane Boleyn executed, regardless of her mental condition. Her madness was not seen as a shield, but a threat to the king's narrative. The idea that she might escape punishment because of her breakdown enraged him. To Henry, Jane was not just guilty of aiding a treasonous affair, she was a living reminder of secrets, betrayals, and scandals that he desperately wanted buried. Her mental state, whether genuine or feigned, was irrelevant to a king obsessed with control. In a move that shocked even his most loyal advisors, Henry pressured Parliament to pass an Act of Attainder in February 1542. This law was crafted specifically for Jane. It allowed for the execution of a person regardless of their mental capacity. Never before in English history had such a law been considered, let alone enacted. Legal and religious leaders were appalled. Archbishop Thomas Cranmer and others warned against violating centuries of moral and legal tradition. But Henry's will prevailed. The act not only condemned Jane but shattered a foundational principle of English justice. Jane, barely conscious of her fate, was told she would die. Reports describe her as being incoherent, occasionally lucid, but mostly lost in a world of hallucinations and grief. She would speak to herself, beg for forgiveness, or simply remain unresponsive. Yet preparations for her execution proceeded. Her mental collapse did not halt the machinery of Tudor justice, now reshaped to accommodate the king's wrath. Jane's execution was set for February 13, 1542, alongside that of Catherine Howard. Two women, once bound by courtly duty and personal tragedy, would now die together under a new law designed to crush the last remnants of mercy in English jurisprudence. On the morning of her execution, Jane Boleyn was led from the Tower to the scaffold on Tower Green. Witnesses described her as ghost-like, pale, and barely able to walk. It's unclear whether she fully understood what was happening. Some said she murmured prayers. Others believed she was too far gone to comprehend death. Catherine Howard was executed first, a tragic end to a queen whose youth and naivety had doomed her. Then Jane Boleyn was brought forth, her body trembling and mind shattered. Unlike the usual executions marked by speeches or final confessions, Jane offered none. Her silence was haunting, a testament to the depth of her psychological ruin. The axe fell swiftly, ending a life marked by intelligence, ambition, survival, and ultimately, a descent into madness. Jane's death marked one of the darkest chapters in Tudor history. It was not just a political execution. It was a calculated legal assassination of a mentally ill woman, orchestrated by a king willing to rewrite centuries of law to destroy one woman. Her story has since haunted historians and legal scholars alike. The act of attainder that killed Jane was later seen as a horrifying abuse of royal power. It exposed the extent to which Henry VIII would go to protect his image and eliminate perceived threats. Jane Boleyn's life and death reveal the cruelty and corruption at the heart of Tudor England. Her tragic end serves as a grim reminder of what happens when personal vengeance overrides justice, and when even madness offers no sanctuary from the wrath of a tyrant. Today, Jane Boleyn stands as a symbol of the forgotten victims of history, those whose minds broke under the weight of power, secrecy, and betrayal, and who were condemned not in spite of their fragility, but because of it. You've just witnessed one of the darkest punishments in history, but many more still lurk in the shadows. So if you dare, subscribe to Torture Vault, where every scream from the past still echoes.